A Love Unscripted, The Billionaire and the Secretary. Get ready for a surprising love story that will touch your heart. Let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from and be a part of this special moment. A mother's dawn. The sun had barely risen when Mariah Olson opened her eyes. Her alarm clock still read 5:30 a.m., but the cries of Leo, her 1-year-old son, already echoed through the small 2-room house on the city's outskirts. With a tired sigh, she got up, tidying her disheveled brown hair. "I'm coming, my love," she murmured, walking to the makeshift crib in the corner of the room. Little Leo had intense green eyes, a trait he didn't inherit from her. Mariah picked him up gently, swaying him softly while preparing his bottle. Her movements were automatic, the result of an exhausting routine that had repeated itself for 12 months. By 6:45 a.m., Mariah was dressed in her single blazer over a simple white blouse, the unofficial uniform of the secretaries at Northwood Elementary School. Leo, now fed and changed, played with a worn rattle while she finished packing his small backpack with diapers and bottles. "Let's go, my little one. Ms. Jenkins must be waiting." Ms. Jenkins, a 65-year-old woman who lived downstairs, was the only person Mariah trusted to care for Leo while she worked. For a modest sum, the woman welcomed him daily with grandmotherly love. Today's payday, thank goodness, Mariah thought, mentally calculating how she would divide her salary between overdue rent, the electricity bill, Leo's diapers, and the tuition for the pedagogy course she attended 3 nights a week. No one at school knew Mariah was a single mother. She kept her personal life in absolute secrecy, fearing judgment and gossip. In the secretary's files, where she worked, there was only her impeccable resume and recommendations from previous jobs. Her history with Leo's father was a closed chapter, or so she believed. A fateful re-encounter. The day at school unfolded as usual. Phone calls, filing, attending to parents and teachers. Mariah was typing reports when the principal, Ms. Davison, appeared with an unusual smile. "Mariah, we need your help. An important businessman will visit the school tomorrow for a possible social project. I want you to organize everything and accompany him during the visit." "Of course, Ms. Davison. You can count on me," she replied automatically, without imagining that visit would change her life forever. That night, as she rocked Leo to sleep, Mariah looked at the only photo she kept of the man she had met a 1.5 years ago. The photo, discreetly taken with her old cell phone during the inauguration event, showed an elegant man in a dark suit, confidently smiling at an invisible audience. Ethan Blackwood, the businessman, who had swept through her life like a comet, leaving only a luminous trail. And Leo, "If only you knew you had such a beautiful son," she whispered to the photo before putting it back in the drawer. Attempts to contact him had been futile. Emails were never answered, calls never connected. Eventually, Mariah gave up. Her pride spoke louder than financial need. What she didn't know was that, the next day, fate would bring Ethan back into her life in a way neither of them could foresee. The next morning dawned with a fine rain that blurred the school windows. Mariah arrived early, her hair still damp and her breath quick after dropping Leo off with Ms. Jenkins and rushing to avoid being late. She meticulously organized the meeting room, arranged folders with educational projects, and placed bottles of water and homemade cookies that the lunch lady had specially prepared for the occasion. "Everything needs to be perfect," she murmured to herself as she smoothed her only formal skirt. At precisely 10 o'clock, Principal Davison appeared at the secretary's door. "They've arrived, Mariah. Let's welcome them." Mariah's heart skipped a beat when she saw the man entering the main gate. Even under the black umbrella held by an assistant, she would recognize that bearing, that confident stride, anywhere. Ethan Blackwood, exactly as in the photo she kept in her drawer, only with slightly shorter hair and a discreet stubble that gave him an even more sophisticated air. "Gentlemen, this is Mariah Olson, our executive secretary, who will accompany you during the visit," Ms. Davison introduced. Mariah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her hands trembled slightly as she extended her right hand to formally greet him. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Olson," Ethan said, without any sign of recognition in his eyes. She swallowed hard. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Blackwood." A parent's instinct. For the next hour, Mariah led the group through the school corridors, showing classrooms, the computer lab, with only 5 working computers, and the small library. Her professional voice perfectly hid the storm of emotions consuming her inside. "And this is our music room, a project we started 2 years ago with community donations," she explained, opening the door to a modest room where used instruments were carefully arranged. It was then that her cell phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from Ms. Jenkins. "Leo has a fever. Need to take him to the clinic urgently." The color drained from Mariah's face. "Excuse me," she murmured to the principal. "I have a family emergency." Before she could leave, however, Ms. Jenkins appeared in the hallway, panting, with Leo in her arms. The boy was red with fever, whimpering. "Sorry, Mariah. I couldn't get a taxi, and the clinic is right next door. I thought it best to bring him to you." Mariah rushed to them, completely forgetting the visit and Ethan. "My God, he's burning up with fever!" she exclaimed, taking her son into her arms. It was at that instant that Ethan approached, concerned by the commotion. "Any problem? Can we help?" And then, his eyes fell on little Leo, who was now looking directly at him, with the same intense green eyes Ethan saw every morning in the mirror. The businessman froze in place, an expression of utter perplexity crossing his face. Is that your son?" he asked, his voice suddenly hoarse. "Yes," Mariah replied, torn between concern for Leo and dread of the situation. "I need to take him to the doctor." "I'll take you both," Ethan said immediately, surprising everyone. "My car's at the door, on the silent ride to the nearest private hospital, not the neighborhood clinic." Mariah held Leo against her chest, while Ethan watched them in the rearview mirror, personally driving the luxurious car. Unspoken questions hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds. After Leo was medicated and fell asleep in his mother's arms in the hospital's VIP waiting room, Ethan finally broke the silence. "How old is he?" 1 year and 2 months, Mariah replied, without looking away from her son. "And when? When exactly was he born?" "March 10th of last year." Ethan did a quick mental calculation, and his face paled further. "Mariah, that inauguration was in June 2 years ago." "Yes," she completed, finally meeting his gaze. "I tried to tell you many times. Your assistants never allowed my messages to reach you." Ethan Blackwood's world, CEO of Blackwood Construction, owner of a fortune estimated in billions, crumbled in that instant. All his empire, his businesses, his materialistic achievements suddenly seemed empty and meaningless before the small creature asleep in the arms of a woman he barely knew, but who carried his blood. The weight of truth. The hospital waiting room remained in absolute silence for long minutes. Ethan ran his hands over his face repeatedly, as if trying to wake up from a dream. Leo slept peacefully, his fever already receding thanks to the top-tier medications the pediatrician had prescribed. "Why didn't you insist more?" he finally asked, his voice almost a whisper. Mariah adjusted Leo in her lap before replying. "After the 10th attempt, I realized I was hitting a wall. Your secretary made it clear you didn't entertain gold diggers." Ethan closed his eyes, a wave of anger coursing through his body. He knew exactly who had blocked those attempts at contact. Vanessa, his executive assistant, prided herself on protecting him from opportunists. "I need to see," he said suddenly, looking at Leo intensely. "I need to be sure." "DNA test?" Mariah asked with a bitter half-smile. Of course, it was to be expected. No, Ethan replied, surprising her. I need to see him awake. Look into his eyes. As if on cue, Leo opened his green eyes, still bright with residual fever. The boy looked curiously at Ethan, and, to the surprise of both adults, extended his little arms toward him. He never does that with strangers, Mariah murmured, perplexed, her hands trembling. Ethan approached, and after a confirming glance at Mariah, picked the boy up for the first time. An indescribable sensation coursed through his body, as eyes identical to his own stared at him with innocent curiosity. The boy had his chin, his eyebrows, even the shape of his mouth resembled Ethan's mother's, who had passed away 5 years prior. Hi, Leo, he said, his voice thick with contained emotion. To Mariah's astonishment, the boy smiled and touched Ethan's face with his little hands, exploring his beard with fascination. Pa, Leo babbled, one of the few words he could pronounce. Ethan felt the world stop in that instant. Something primal, ancestral, stirred within him, an instinct he didn't know he possessed. Involuntary tears welled in his eyes as he held that little piece of himself, that continuation of his lineage, his flesh and blood, who smiled at him without reservations or judgment. He's my son, he said, not as a question, but as a recognition that came from the depths of his soul. He's my son, Mariah merely nodded, her own eyes glistening at the scene she had never imagined witnessing. Let's go to my apartment, Ethan said suddenly. Both of you. Leo needs proper rest, and we need to talk. I can't just go to a stranger's apartment? Mariah protested, although Ethan was no longer exactly a stranger. A hotel then, whatever you prefer. But we need to talk, and it can't be here. His eyes pleaded for understanding. Please, Mariah, I just found out I have a son. I need to understand everything. 2 hours. A new perspective. 2 hours later, all three were in Ethan's spacious penthouse apartment on the 13th floor of the city's most luxurious building. Leo, now recovered and cheerful, crawled curiously across the soft living room carpet, while Ethan watched him with almost hypnotic fascination. Does he walk yet? He asked, without taking his eyes off the boy. A few steps, holding onto furniture, Mariah replied, embarrassed by the contrast between the lavish surroundings and the simplicity of her clothes. He'll be running soon. A heavy silence fell between them, filled only by the happy sounds Leo made as he discovered every corner of the new environment. Why did you decide to have the baby? Ethan asked finally, turning to face her. Knowing who I was, you could have demanded a lot. A settlement, money, anything. Mariah straightened her posture, visibly offended. I never wanted your money, and deciding to have the baby wasn't even a question for me. He was my son. Period. End of story. Ethan immediately realized his mistake. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. He shook his head. I'm used to people approaching me for interest. It's hard to believe someone simply wanted nothing from me. I just wanted Leo to know who his father was, she replied, softening her expression. For you to know he existed. The rest was up to you. Leo chose that moment to crawl over to Ethan and, pulling himself up by his knees, stood upright, looking at him with a toothless smile that would melt the hardest heart. Instinctively, Ethan picked him up again, feeling the small heart beat against his own. I missed a whole year, he said, his voice trembling with contained emotion. His first steps, his first words, everything. A solitary tear rolled down his face when Leo, in a spontaneous gesture, rested his head on his chest, as if recognizing an innate security in him. Ethan gently squeezed his son close, breathing in the scent of baby and infant soap, an aroma he had been unfamiliar with until then, but which instantly became the most precious in the world. Never again, he promised, looking at Mariah with determination through his unshed tears. Never again will I miss a moment of his life. Building bridges beyond material wealth. The week that followed was an emotional roller coaster for all three. Ethan, impulsive by nature, wanted to make up for lost time all at once. The very next morning, his personal lawyer was at the apartment with paternity acknowledgement papers and a child support proposal that made Mariah choke on her coffee. "This is more than I make in 2 years," she protested, handing back the document. "It's the least I can offer," Ethan replied, watching Leo play with an incredibly expensive teddy bear he had ordered the night before. "My son deserves the best." "Our son," Mariah corrected softly. "And the best doesn't always mean the most expensive, Ethan." It was strange to call him by his first name after so long imagining this moment. In fact, everything felt surreal. Being in that magazine-worthy apartment, discussing Leo's life with a man who, for 48 hours prior, hadn't known his own son existed. "I don't want you to move in here," Ethan said, surprising her again. "Not yet. It would be too much for all of us. But I'd like to buy a suitable apartment for you both, in a safe neighborhood, near your college." Mariah hesitated, her pride battling against the desire to provide a better life for Leo. "I need to think," she replied finally. "Everything is happening too fast." Ethan nodded, respecting her space. In the following days, they established an improbable routine. He appeared at Mariah's small apartment after work, always bringing a new toy for Leo, but respecting her rules about not overdoing the gifts. In return, she allowed him to spend time with their son, learning to change diapers, give baths, and put Leo to sleep. It was on one of these nights that Mariah found him crying silently on the small sofa, while Leo slept in his arms. "What's wrong?" she asked, concerned. "He held my finger while he fell asleep," Ethan replied, his voice thick. "And I realized I'd never felt anything so important as this, nothing. Not even when I closed my first $1 million contract, not even when I bought my first mansion." He looked at her with glistening eyes. "I have everything, Mariah, everything money can buy, and I never knew what happiness was until I felt his little hand holding my finger." Something changed between them that night. An invisible bridge began to form, not based on the physical attraction that had briefly united them in the past, but on something deeper, the unconditional love they both felt for that small person who slept innocently, oblivious to the turmoil he had caused in the adults' lives. A vision for a better world. The following Monday, Mariah was called to the principal's office. With her heart in her throat, fearing dismissal for the previous week's incident, she entered Ms. Davison's office only to find Ethan sitting there with an enigmatic smile. "Mr. Blackwood told me about your situation," the principal said with a sympathetic smile. "And he has a proposal for the school that directly involves you." Ethan stood up, adjusting his impeccable suit. "I want to finance the complete renovation of the school and the creation of a model daycare center for the community," he explained. "And I would like you to coordinate the project, Mariah. I know about your pedagogy course. It would be an opportunity to put what you're studying into practice, with a salary commensurate with the new role." Mariah was speechless, tears threatening to fall. "Why?" she managed to ask finally. "Because I believe in you," he replied simply. "And because I want Leo to grow up seeing that his parents work together to make the world a better place." That night, for the first time, Mariah allowed Ethan to take Leo to see the penthouse apartment. She watched with a tight heart as the father showed his son, who had just taken his first unassisted steps, each luxurious room. It was in the main living room, with the city lit up like a carpet of stars below them, that the most significant moment happened. Leo, enchanted by the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling glass window, took his first successive steps, wobbly but determined, directly from Mariah's lap into Ethan's open arms. when the boy threw himself into his arms with a crystalline laugh of pure joy, Ethan could no longer contain his emotion. He hugged his son tightly, tears now streaming freely down his face. They weren't just tears of happiness, but of transformation. The man who had only known the value of money was finally discovering the immeasurable value of love. "Thank you," he whispered, looking at Mariah over Leo's head. "Thank you for being strong, when I didn't even know I needed to be." A new family, a new home. The following months brought substantial changes for everyone. After much insistence from Ethan, and considering Leo's well-being, Mariah finally agreed to move into a comfortable apartment in a safe neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious like Ethan's penthouse, but it had 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and, to Leo's delight, a small private garden where he could play. "It's perfect," she said on the first night, watching her son excitedly explore every corner of their new home. "Big enough for us, but not ostentatious." Ethan learned to respect the boundaries Mariah set. Initially, his tendency was to flood Leo with expensive toys and designer clothes, until she made him understand that wasn't what the boy needed. "He needs your time, Ethan, your presence, not your presence." And so the powerful businessman began to rearrange his schedule, something he never imagined doing for anyone. Important meetings were postponed, international trips delayed or canceled. To the astonishment of his partners, Ethan now left promptly at 5 in the afternoon, twice a week, to accompany Leo to his baby swimming lessons. The daycare project at the school progressed rapidly. Mariah proved to be a competent coordinator, and her knowledge of the community's real needs made the project genuinely useful, not just an empty philanthropic gesture. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, while Leo took his nap, Ethan and Mariah chatted in the living room of the new apartment, reviewing the daycare blueprints. "I never thought I'd get so involved in a social project," he confessed, pouring himself more coffee. "I always made donations, of course, but it was more for appearing in the right columns and getting tax breaks." Mariah smiled. "Did Leo change you?" "No," Ethan replied, looking at her intently. "You both changed me." For a month now, Ethan had occasionally been sleeping in the guest room of the apartment, mainly when he stayed late playing with Leo. The daily proximity slowly rebuilt a connection between them, deeper than the brief affair they had had. "Do you know what impresses me most about you?" he asked suddenly. "What?" "Your strength. You raised our son alone, working and studying, without asking anyone for anything." He paused. "I feel ashamed when I think about what could have happened if we hadn't reconnected." Mariah reached across the table, touching his hand lightly. "But we did reconnect. That's what matters now." The touch, as innocent as it was, sent an electric current through Ethan's body. For weeks, he had been fighting the growing attraction he felt for Mariah, not just for the simple beauty that had already captivated him at their first meeting, but for the extraordinary woman he discovered every day. "Mariah," he began, hesitant, "I know we started everything backwards, but I'd like to invite you to dinner. Just us two. A real date." She withdrew her hand, suddenly nervous. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Ethan. We have Leo to think about." "It's precisely because of Leo that I want to do things right this time," he replied, holding her hand again. "I'm not asking for commitment, just a chance to get to know each other better, as we should have done from the start." The shy smile Mariah gave him was answer enough. A date to remember and growing love. At dinner, in a discreet yet elegant restaurant, Ethan discovered that Mariah had lost her parents in an accident when she was just 19. That she dreamed of creating a network of quality early childhood schools in underserved neighborhoods, and that her favorite dessert was homemade milk pudding. She, in turn, met a different Ethan, from the ruthless businessman of business magazines, someone who cared for his mother with Alzheimer's until her last day, who loved old Western movies, and who, despite all his fortune, felt profoundly lonely until Leo's arrival. "Why did you never marry?" she asked as they savored dessert. Ethan shrugged. "I never found anyone who saw me beyond my money. Until now." The look they exchanged contained unspoken promises. When he dropped her off at home that night, the goodbye kiss was soft, almost hesitant, as if they were starting something entirely new. And indeed they were. In the following weeks, they found a balance between being Leo's parents and exploring their own feelings. Each day, the barrier Mariah had built to protect her heart crumbled a little more, while Ethan learned the true meaning of family. On Leo's first birthday since Ethan entered their lives, they organized a small party in the apartment garden. It wasn't the extravagant event Ethan initially proposed, nor the modest celebration Mariah had planned. It was the perfect middle ground, like everything they had worked on together in recent months. As Leo, covered in cake frosting, was admired by the few guests, Ethan pulled Mariah aside to a more secluded corner of the garden. "These past months have been the happiest of my life," he said, holding her hands. "And I realized something important." "What?" His gaze intensified. "That true wealth isn't in my bank accounts, nor in my ventures. It's here." He pointed to Leo, who laughed as he was lifted by Mariah's grandmother. "And here." Now his finger gently touched her chest, over her heart. "Mariah," Ethan continued, his voice slightly trembling, something rare for a man accustomed to commanding rooms full of executives. "I never thought it would be possible to feel what I feel for you and Leo. It's like before I was just existing, and now I'm finally living." Mariah's eyes welled with unshed tears. She knew the path to this point hadn't been easy. The first months were filled with adjustments, discussions about values and upbringing, and the constant need to balance two worlds that until then seemed incompatible. "I feel the same way," she finally replied. "But I'm still scared." "Of what?" "That we're too different. That one day you'll realize you prefer the life you had before, without the complications of a family." Ethan smiled, a smile that reached his eyes. "You know what I discovered? That my previous life wasn't simple. It was empty. And having you two to worry about, to love, to plan a future with, that's truly worth it." At that moment, Leo came wobbling over to them, his little face still covered in frosting, extending his arms to be picked up. Ethan scooped him up, and the boy immediately extended a little arm to Mariah too, wanting her with them. "I think he agrees with me," Ethan joked, as Mariah moved closer, forming a collective hug that someone discreetly photographed in the background. Their first true family photo, a promise under the stars. That night, after all the guests had left, and Leo was fast asleep in his new crib, Mariah found Ethan on the balcony, watching the stars. "Thank you," she said, standing beside him. "For what?" "For not giving up. For trying to understand my world, even though it's so different from yours." Ethan turned to face her, the moonlight reflecting in his eyes. "And thank you for showing me what truly matters in this life." The kiss that followed wasn't like their first, impulsive and passionate, from years ago. Nor was it like the hesitant kisses they had exchanged in recent dates. It was a kiss of recognition, of two people who finally understood that, despite all obstacles, they were exactly where they were meant to be. 3 months later, when the school's model daycare was inaugurated, with capacity to serve 200 children from the community, Mariah couldn't have been prouder. Seeing working mothers leaving their children in a safe, colorful, and pedagogically appropriate space was the realization of a dream she never imagined possible. "We couldn't have done it without you," she told Ethan during the inauguration ceremony. "You're mistaken," he replied, holding Leo's hand as the boy watched the other children in wonder. "I merely provided the resources. The vision was always yours." That night, after putting Leo to sleep, Ethan surprised Mariah with an envelope. "What's this?" she asked, curious. "Open it and find out," Inside were deeds to a piece of land and architectural blueprints for a complete educational center, from daycare to elementary school, in one of the city's most underserved regions. "Ethan, this is your next project, if you want it," he said with a sparkle in his eye. "The Leo Olson Blackwood Educational Foundation, yours to direct, with complete autonomy." Mariah was speechless, her eyes glistening as she examined the detailed blueprints. "Why?" "Because I believe in you," he replied simply. "And because I want our son to grow up knowing he can make a difference in the world." It was in that moment that Mariah knew, with absolute certainty, that she had not only found a father for her son, but also a partner for her life, a home, a family, forever. In the following weeks, as they planned the foundation project, Ethan started spending more nights at Mariah and Leo's apartment. At first, still in the guest room, but eventually, naturally, by her side. The transition was gradual and organic, just as their relationship had been since their reunion. There were no grand declarations or spectacular gestures, just the growing certainty that they belonged to each other and to Leo. One Sunday morning, as they prepared breakfast together, and Leo played in the living room, Ethan asked the question he had been rehearsing for weeks. "What do you think about us living together? All three of us?" Mariah paused, beating the eggs, considering. "In your apartment or mine?" "Neither," he replied, surprising her. "In a new place, a place we'll choose together, that reflects who we are now, not who we were before we met." Her smile was answer enough. They chose a house with a garden in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't a mansion, as Ethan initially proposed, nor a modest property, as Mariah would have settled for. It was, like everything in their relationship, the perfect balance between two worlds. On the night they moved in, after putting Leo to sleep in his new room, decorated with stars on the ceiling, Ethan led Mariah to the garden, where he had prepared a small surprise, a table set for two under the stars, with candles and flowers. "To celebrate our new beginning," he explained. During dinner, they recalled the improbable journey that had brought them there. From their brief encounter years ago, through Leo's birth, the unexpected reunion, to the months of mutual rediscovery. "If someone told me this story, I'd say it's a movie script," Mariah joked. "And we haven't reached the happy ending yet," Ethan replied, getting up and, to her surprise, kneeling before her. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done a long time ago." From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box. "Mariah Olson, you gave me the greatest gift a man could receive, our son. And then, without me deserving it, you gave me a second chance to be part of his life and yours. You taught me what true love is, what family is, what truly matters in this life." He opened the box, revealing a delicate ring with a single stone that sparkled under the moonlight. "You accept me as I am with all my flaws and make me want to be better every day. Mariah, will you marry me?" Mariah looked at the ring glittering under the starlight, and then at the man kneeling before her. Silent tears began to stream down her face as a whirlwind of emotions enveloped her. "Ethan!" her voice cracked. For an instant, Ethan's heart stopped, fearing a refusal, but then the most beautiful smile lit up Mariah's face. "Yes," she finally replied. "Yes, I want to marry you." With trembling hands, Ethan placed the ring on her finger. It wasn't ostentatiously large, as he might have chosen months ago, but elegant and meaningful, exactly as Mariah would prefer. When he stood up and took her in his arms, the kiss they shared sealed not just a commitment, but a complete journey of rediscovery and transformation. "Mommy!" Leo's sleepy voice came from the house door. The boy stood rubbing his eyes, still in his dinosaur pajamas. Mariah and Ethan turned, still embracing, and smiled at their son. "Come here, champ," Ethan called. Leo ran to them with his still unsteady steps. Ethan lifted him into his arms, bringing him into the shared embrace with Mariah. "Leo," Ethan said softly, "Mommy and Daddy are getting married. Do you know what that means?" The boy shook his head negatively, his green eyes, similar to his father's, wide with curiosity. "It means we'll be a family forever," Mariah explained, adjusting a rebellious curl on her son's forehead. Leo smiled, that innocent smile that melted their hearts daily, and clapped his hands with joy, even without fully understanding the meaning of that moment. "Family," he repeated, one of the words he had recently learned, and that always brought proud smiles to his parents' faces. There, under the starry sky of their new home's garden, the three shared a hug that symbolized everything they had built together: trust, respect, understanding, and, above all, true love. The wedding and a lasting legacy. The weeks leading up to the ceremony were a perfect reflection of Ethan and Mariah's relationship, a constant exercise in balancing different worlds. Ethan, accustomed to delegating everything to professionals, initially suggested hiring a renowned event planner who had organized celebrity weddings. "That way you won't have to worry about anything," he argued, showing her the professional's luxurious portfolio. Mariah flipped through the material in silence, observing the extravagant decorations and ostentatious details. "It's beautiful," she conceded, closing the catalog. "But it doesn't feel like us. I want to be part of every decision, choose every flower, every detail. I want it to be personal, not perfect." Ethan's eyes softened, understanding. "Then we'll do it together, our way." And so it was. On nights after putting Leo to sleep, they would sit on the new house's balcony, with papers, fabric samples, and lists spread between cups of tea. Ethan discovered an unexpected pleasure in participating in these choices. Never before had he cared about color nuances or types of flowers. One night, while debating the menu, Mariah surprised him. "I'd like us to serve mini chicken pastries," she said, watching his reaction. "It's what I ate the day I found out I was pregnant. I was alone, scared, not knowing what to do. I ate a mini chicken pastry, sitting on a park bench, imagining what life would be like from then on." Ethan took her hand, his eyes moist with emotion. "We'll have the best mini chicken pastries in the world at our wedding," he promised. "And never again will you be alone with your fears." The guest list was another challenge. Ethan's first version had over 200 names: partners, influential businessmen, politicians, people it would be strategic to invite. Mariah's had only 20: close friends, some teachers, Ms. Jenkins. After long conversations, they reached a middle ground: 80 people who genuinely meant something to both of them. Ethan was surprised to realize how many friends on his original list were merely superficial connections. The night before the wedding, while Mariah spent the night at a friend's house following tradition, Ethan stayed alone with Leo. It was the first time he had taken care of his son for an entire night without Mariah's presence. "And now it's just us, champ," he said, after putting the boy to bed. "Are you excited for tomorrow?" Leo nodded sleepily, hugging the teddy bear that had been with him since he was a baby. "I'm going to carry the rings. You can't get married without them," he said, with the seriousness only a child can have. "Exactly," Ethan agreed, stroking his hair. "You have the most important role." When Leo finally fell asleep, Ethan went to the balcony with a glass of whiskey. Looking at the stars, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him there. He remembered what his life was like before: the impeccably clean, empty penthouse, the lonely nights disguised as freedom, the superficial relationships. If someone told me 2 years ago that I'd be here, about to marry a woman I briefly met, and have a son with whom I learned the meaning of love, I would have laughed in that person's face, he murmured to himself. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Mariah. "Just wanted to say goodnight," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "And that I love you." "I love you too," he replied with a naturalness that still surprised him. "Leo's asleep. Everything's under control." "Are you sure? I can hear the ice in your glass." Ethan chuckled. "Just a whiskey to toast the stars and the extraordinary woman who will be my wife tomorrow." The silence on the other end of the line was laden with emotion. "You've really changed," she finally said. "You and Leo transformed me," he corrected. "Good night, future Mrs. Blackwood." "Olson Blackwood," she corrected with a laugh. "Some things don't change, Ethan." And he smiled, because he didn't want them to change. The wedding morning dawned perfectly. Clear sky, mild temperature, a gentle breeze rustling the garden flowers. Leo woke up excited, jumping on Ethan's bed. "It's today, Daddy! It's today you and Mommy are getting married!" Ethan hugged him, inhaling deeply the scent of child shampoo from his son's hair. "Yes, champ. Today we officially become a family." "But we're already a family," Leo replied, with the simple wisdom of children. The comment touched Ethan deeply. "You're right. We're just celebrating what we already are." The morning preparations passed in a whirlwind, the caterers arriving, chairs being positioned in the garden, the small makeshift altar under the oldest tree on the property. Ethan supervised everything with an attention to detail that surprised even his assistants, normally in charge of such tasks. "I want everything to be perfect for her," he explained when asked. "Not because we're rich or important, but because she deserves the most beautiful celebration in the world." As he dressed, helped by his best man, an old college friend who had remained close despite the changes in his life, Ethan received a small wrapped box with a note from Mariah. "For you to wear today, and remember where we came from," the note read. Inside was a pair of simple cufflinks made with small blue stones. "She bought these for you?" asked the best man, surprised by the simplicity of the gift. "No," Ethan replied, his voice thick. "These are the stones Leo found on the beach the first time we went to the sea together. All three of us. He was fascinated by the color and said it matched his mom's eyes." The best man watched with new understanding as Ethan replaced the diamond cufflinks he had planned to wear with the simple blue stones. "She turned them into the most valuable gift I've ever received," Ethan added. When the first chords of music began, the guests already settled in the garden chairs turned to see Leo, impeccable in his little suit, carrying a cushion with the wedding rings. The boy walked with absolute concentration, his tongue slightly out in a sign of effort not to run or trip. Ethan, waiting at the makeshift altar, felt his heart swell with pride. His son, words that still evoked a wave of emotion, approached with such earnestness to do everything right. Then the music changed, and everyone stood. Mariah appeared at the beginning of the flower-lined path, and Ethan's world stopped. It wasn't the dress, though it was beautiful in its elegant simplicity. It wasn't the hairstyle, nor the soft makeup that enhanced her natural beauty. It was the smile, the quiet confidence, the eyes that met his immediately among everyone. It was the woman who had transformed his life by showing him what truly mattered. Tears came unbidden, and for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't try to hold them back. He let them stream freely down his face, silent witnesses to the transformation in his heart. When Mariah reached him, given away by her elderly grandmother, who had raised her since she was young, Ethan took her trembling hands in his. "You look absolutely stunning," he whispered. "And you're crying," she replied with a tender smile, wiping a tear from his face. "From happiness," he confirmed, the first of many. The ceremony proceeded, intimate and emotional. Not only did the officiant speak, but close friends also shared memories and wishes for the couple. Ms. Jenkins, visibly moved, recounted how she had seen love slowly blossom between them, day after day, coffee cup after coffee cup, until they could no longer deny what was before everyone's eyes. During the vows, Ethan surprised everyone with his sincerity. "Mariah, before you and Leo entered my life, I was a man rich in possessions, but poor in meaning. You taught me that true wealth is not what we own, but whom we love and how we love." I remember the day I sat for hours watching Leo sleep, marveling at every breath, every movement of his tiny fingers, realizing that nothing I had achieved until then compared to that moment of pure admiration. I promise every day to be the man you and our son deserve, to walk by your side through happy and difficult times, and to build a better world with you, not just for us, but for all the children we will touch through our projects. And above all, I promise never to forget that the greatest fortune I possess is here, in the love we share. Mariah's equally moving vows reflected the extraordinary journey they had traveled. "Ethan, when I found out I was pregnant, I feared our son would grow up without knowing his father. The nights were long, full of uncertainties and fears. I remember talking to Leo still in my womb, promising I would be strong for both of us, that he would never lack love. I never imagined fate would bring us together in the most unexpected way, and that I would find in you not only the loving father Leo deserves, but also the partner who completes my life. You entered our small world, and instead of imposing yours, you learned to create a new one with us. You showed me that it's possible to be strong and vulnerable at the same time, that we can build bridges between different worlds when love is true. I saw you learn to change diapers with the same dedication with which you close multi-million-dollar deals, and I watched your transformation with growing admiration. I promise to walk by your side, to be your partner, your friend, your confidant. And together, to create a home where love, respect, and understanding are always our guides." During the exchange of rings, Leo, who was watching everything with his curious eyes, suddenly slipped away from Ms. Jenkins and ran to join his parents, hugging their legs. Instead of embarrassment, the moment brought emotional laughter from the guests and an impromptu family hug that became the most significant photo in their wedding album. "I guess someone doesn't want to be left out," the officiant commented with a gentle smile. "He will never be left out," Ethan replied, bending down to pick up his son. "We are here today because of him." And so, with Leo in Ethan's arms, they completed the exchange of rings and were declared husband and wife. The kiss that sealed the union was interrupted by Leo's little voice. "Now we're a family forever." The guests erupted in applause and laughter as Mariah and Ethan exchanged glances of pure happiness. Yes, they were a family, not just from that moment on, but from the instant their paths crossed, guided by a small life that had begun even before they knew they could be a family. A legacy of giving and a love of everlasting. At the small reception that followed in the garden, decorated with soft lights and round tables under the shade of the trees, Ethan surprised Mariah with an announcement. "To celebrate our wedding, the Leo Olson Blackwood Educational Foundation is officially launching a scholarship program for single mothers who wish to complete their studies, because everyone deserves a second chance, just as life gave us." Mariah, emotional, embraced her now husband, recognizing in the gesture not only generosity, but a deep understanding of her own journey. 20 full scholarships per year, he continued, covering not only tuition, but also textbooks, transportation, and, most importantly, childcare for their children during school hours. One of the guests, an important local businessman, immediately stood up. "Count me in to fund 5 more scholarships," he announced, inspired by the initiative. Before the night ended, the program had already tripled its initial reach, with other businessmen present committing to participate in the project. "See what you've done?" Mariah whispered to Ethan as they danced their first waltz as a couple. "You're transforming not just our lives, but so many other families." "We're doing this," he corrected, gently twirling her. "You showed me the way. I just have the resources to expand it." As night fell completely, paper lanterns were lit throughout the garden, creating an almost magical atmosphere. Leo, exhausted but determined not to miss anything, fell asleep in Ms. Jenkins' lap, who watched the couple with maternal pride. "I've never seen two such different worlds meet so perfectly," she commented to her table neighbor. "It's as if each completes exactly what was missing in the other." When the guests began to leave, Ethan and Mariah remained, hand in hand, receiving hugs and wishes for happiness. Leo was already sound asleep in his room, under the care of Ms. Jenkins, who had agreed to stay with him for a few days, while the newlyweds enjoyed a brief honeymoon. "Are you sure he'll be okay without us?" Mariah asked, stroking her sleeping son's hair when she checked on him one last time. "He'll be great," the older woman assured her. "Besides, every mother deserves a few days to herself, especially one who has worked as hard as you, my dear." Mariah kissed her son's forehead and then hugged the woman, who had become an essential part of their lives. "Thank you, Ms. Jenkins, for everything. Go be happy, my child. You deserve it." A new beginning, forever. The next morning, as they boarded a flight to a discreet private island, Mariah's first trip on a private plane, she looked out at the ocean through the window. "I still feel like I'm in a dream," she confessed, watching the blue vastness below them. "As if at any moment I could wake up and be back in my small apartment, struggling to pay bills." Ethan took her hand, caressing the new wedding band on her finger. "I also feel like I'm in a dream," he replied. "But my nightmare was different. It was waking up alone in an empty penthouse with all the money in the world and no one to share it with. No one who loved me for who I am, not for what I have." Mariah turned to him, touching his face softly. "Who would have thought that brief encounter at the inauguration would bring us here?" "Destiny," he replied, squeezing her hand. "Or perhaps simply love." The 5 days they spent on the island were a deep dive into each other, without the distractions of routine, without daily responsibilities. Just the pleasure of simply being together, rediscovering each other in this new light. They walked on the beach at sunset, telling childhood stories, revealing dreams they had never shared with anyone. Ethan spoke about the pressure of being the sole heir to an empire, the constant fear of disappointing his late father. Mariah shared the pain of losing her parents so young, the loneliness of her first years on her own. "It's funny how we both knew loneliness in different forms," she reflected, as they watched the stars on a particularly clear night. "You surrounded by people but without real connections. Me isolated by circumstances, but longing to belong. And now we belong to each other," he concluded, embracing her under the starry sky. And to Leo. It was that same night, under the sparkling moonlight on the sea, that Mariah shared a dream she had never confessed to anyone. "I always wanted to have a daughter too," she said almost shyly. "A little sister for Leo, a complete family." Ethan's eyes sparkled with contained emotion. "Maybe we can start working on that right now," he suggested with a tender smile, leading her by the hand back to their beachfront bungalow. Years later, a thriving legacy. The school lawn was filled with chairs arranged in perfect rows. On the stage, set up under a huge tree, Leo, now 7 years old, nervously awaited his turn to receive his certificate from the first graduating class of the Blackwood Community School, the first of several educational projects Mariah and Ethan had developed together. The school was not just another educational institution. It was the materialization of a shared dream. Mariah's social vision combined with Ethan's resources and influence. It had started small, with only 2 classrooms, but had grown rapidly, becoming a reference in the region for its innovative and inclusive pedagogy. From the front row, Ethan watched his son with undisguised pride. It wasn't just paternal pride for the intelligent and sensitive boy Leo had become, but also for everything they had built together as a family. Beside him, Mariah held a 3-year-old girl, Lucy, the newest member of the Olsen Blackwood family. Lucy had her mother's blue eyes and her father's stubborn determination. From her first steps, she showed a strong personality that often made Leo, her protective older brother, roll his eyes with loving exasperation. "Daddy, look," Lucy whispered, pointing to the stage. "Leo's going to get an award." "A certificate, darling," Mariah gently corrected. "Like the ones you get at ballet school. A very important certificate," the girl emphasized, carefully pronouncing the new word. Ethan smiled, marveling at children's ability to turn simple words into achievements. Watching his family, he felt that familiar wave of gratitude that had become a constant part of his life. 5 years ago, never could he have imagined he would be there, about to celebrate another family accomplishment that had nothing to do with corporate acquisitions or new ventures. His company continued to prosper, certainly, but now it had purpose beyond profit. Each new project incorporated social and educational elements, inspired by the work of the foundation that bore his son's name. Ethan had become known not only as a successful businessman, but as an effective philanthropist, someone who used his resources to generate real impact. When Leo was finally called, he walked confidently to the center of the stage. Instead of just receiving his certificate and returning to his seat, he took the microphone, surprising everyone. "I want to thank my mom and dad," he said in his clear little voice. "They taught me that family isn't just about who's born together, but who chooses to stay together. And I also want to thank them for building this school so all kids can learn, even if their families don't have much money." Leo paused, taking a deep breath, as Mariah had taught him to control nervousness. "My mom told me that when she was little, before my dad knew I existed, she was very scared she couldn't give me a good education. Now, thanks to them, many other moms don't have to have that fear. And that makes me want to help people when I grow up, just like them." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience when Leo finished his short, impromptu speech. Mariah and Ethan exchanged emotional glances, hands intertwined, while Lucy tried to escape from her mother's lap to go hug her older brother. "He's so much like you," Ethan whispered. "He has your heart," Mariah replied, "and your eyes, and your ability to make me cry with just a few words," he added, discreetly wiping a tear. After the ceremony, while the children played on the school playground, Mariah and Ethan talked with other parents and teachers. The Leo Olsen Blackwood Foundation had already inaugurated 3 similar schools in different underserved regions, each incorporating specific elements of local needs. "Your model is inspiring other entrepreneurs," one of the teachers commented. "Last week I got a call from a group in the South wanting to learn about our methodology." "It's the ripple effect we hoped for," Mariah replied with satisfaction. "Quality education shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right." Ethan, watching his wife speak passionately about the project, felt that familiar tightening in his chest, a mix of admiration, respect, and deep love. Mariah had blossomed in recent years, finding her purpose as the foundation's educational director. Her work was nationally recognized, and recently she had been invited to participate in a governmental committee on inclusive education. "Daddy, Daddy!" Lucy's voice interrupted his thoughts. The girl ran toward him, her dark curls bouncing. "Leo showed me how to climb the highest jungle gym. Come see." Picking up his daughter, Ethan hoisted her onto his shoulders. "Let's go, princess, but remember rule number 1. Safety first," she completed promptly, already familiar with her father's mantra. Leo awaited them on the playground, proudly perched atop the structure. At 7 years old, he already showed Ethan's natural leadership combined with Mariah's empathy, a combination that made teachers predict great things for his future. "Look, Daddy, from here you can see the whole school," he exclaimed enthusiastically. "I see, champ. Impressive." Ethan placed Lucy on the ground, carefully supervising as she tried to follow her brother. "Careful, Leo. Help your sister." Watching his children interact, Leo patiently extending his hand to guide Lucy, the determined girl trying to reach him. Ethan felt a profound contentment. This was his true inheritance, far more valuable than any corporate empire. Compassionate children, aware of their privileges and determined to make a difference. Mariah approached, hugging him around the waist as she also watched the children. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "How I never imagined I could be so happy," he replied simply. "How my definition of success has completely changed." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Mine too. Remember how I was afraid to accept your help at first? How determined I was to do everything alone. You were fiercely independent," he agreed with a smile. "Still are, actually. But I learned that accepting help doesn't mean weakness. It means multiplying possibilities." At that moment, Leo called them over to see something he had discovered, a small bird's nest in a nearby tree. The four gathered, watching the chicks chirp for food. "Look, Lucy, it's a family like ours," Leo explained, with the seriousness of a teacher giving a lesson. "The mommy bird and the daddy bird take care of the baby birds. Together, they're happy?" Lucy asked, with the curiosity typical of her age. "I think so," Leo replied thoughtfully. "They're together." Ethan and Mariah exchanged emotional glances over the children's heads. In those simple words, their son had captured the essence of what they had built together, a safe nest of love and mutual support where each member could grow and flourish. The anniversary and a lifelong promise. Later that day, back home, after the children were asleep, Ethan found Mariah in the office, reviewing some documents for the foundation's next school. "Shouldn't you be resting? It was a busy day," he commented, gently massaging her tense shoulders. "Just finishing some details," she replied, leaning into his touch. "The inauguration is in 3 weeks." Ethan observed the plans spread on the table, architectural blueprints, pedagogical projects, carefully crafted budgets. It was the foundation's 4th educational center, and each one became more comprehensive than the last. "You're building an incredible legacy," he said with admiration. "Much bigger than anything I've ever built." Mariah turned to face him. "We're building it together, Ethan. Every brick, every idea, every dream realized. We did it together." He nodded, extending a hand to help her up. "Come, I want to show you something." He led her to the garden, where the moonlight bathed the trees they had planted when they moved in. Under the largest one, where they had married 5 years earlier, Ethan had placed a small wooden bench with an engraved plaque. Mariah approached to read the inscription by moonlight. "To Mariah, who taught me that true wealth is not in bank accounts, but in the hearts we touch. With all my love, today and always, Ethan." "Happy 5th anniversary," he said softly. "It feels like yesterday we promised to build a life together, right here." Mariah touched the plaque with her fingers, deeply moved. "The best decision I ever made," she whispered. They sat together on the bench, watching the starry sky, hands intertwined as on their first day. The path they had walked had been far from easy. They had their challenges, their arguments, moments of doubt. But every obstacle overcome only strengthened the bonds that united them. "You know what Leo asked me the other day?" Mariah commented. He wanted to know if I ever regretted being a single mother at the beginning, if it would have been easier if we had been together from the start. And what did you answer? That every path has its purpose, that year alone taught me a strength I didn't know I possessed, and that perhaps we needed that time apart to truly value what we have now. Ethan reflected on her words, recognizing the wisdom in them. And you? She asked. Do you regret anything? Only not having known Leo from day one, he replied honestly. Of having missed his first moments, but maybe I wasn't ready to be the father he deserved if we had taken a different path. They fell silent for a few minutes, contemplating the stars and the journey that had brought them there. The gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tree under which they had exchanged vows, like a whisper of approval. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if we hadn't met again at that school, Ethan mused. If fate hadn't conspired in our favor, I would have... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Both knew. He would have continued his life of material success, but forever adrift, unaware of the profound joy and purpose that awaited him. And Mariah would have continued to be strong, resourceful, but perhaps carrying a quiet loneliness. But fate and a child's green eyes had brought them together. And in their shared life, they found a happiness that transcended the simple narrative of a rich man and a humble woman. It was a story of two souls, once adrift, finding their true north in each other, and in the family they built on a foundation of love, respect, and shared purpose. A love story unscripted, yet perfectly orchestrated by the hand of destiny.